Today's Bible reading is from Job chapter 38, verses 1 to 35. Then out of the storm, God spoke to Job. Who are you to question my wisdom with your ignorant, empty words? Now stand up straight and answer the questions I ask you. Were you there when I made the world? If you know so much, tell me about it. Who decided how large it would be? Who stretched the measuring line over it? Do you know all the answers? What holds up the pillars that support the earth? Who laid the cornerstone of the world? In the dawn of that day, the stars sang together, and the heavenly being shouted for joy. Who closed the gates to hold back the sea when it burst from the womb of the earth? It was I who covered the sea with clouds and wrapped it in darkness. I marked a boundary for the sea and kept it behind bolted gates. I told it, so far and no further. Here your powerful waves must stop. Job, have you ever in all your life commanded a day to dawn? Have you ordered the dawn to seize the earth and shake the wicked from their hiding places? Daylight makes the hills and valleys stand out like the folds of a garment, clear as the imprint of a seal on clay. The light of day is too bright for the wicked and restrains them for doing violence. Have you been to the springs in the depth of the sea? Have you walked on the floor of the ocean? Has anyone ever shown you the gates that guard the dark world of the dead? Have you any idea how big the world is? Answer me if you know. Do you know where the light comes from, or what the source of darkness is? Can you show them how far to go or send them back again? I'm sure you can, because you're so old and were there when the world was made. Have you ever visited the storerooms where I keep the snow and the hail? I keep them ready for times of trouble, for days of battle and war. Have you been to the places where the sun comes up, or the place which the east wind blows? Who dug a channel for the pouring rain and cleared the way for the thunderstorm? Who makes rain fall where no one lives? Who waters the dry and thirsty land so that grass springs up? Does either the rain or the dew have a father? Who is the mother of the ice and the frost, which turns the waters to stone and frees the face of the sea? Can you tie the Pleiades together or loosens the bond that holds Orion? Can you guide the star seasons by season and direct the big and the little dipper? Do you know the laws that govern the skies, and can you make them apply to the earth? Can you shout orders to the clouds and make them drench you with rain? And if you command the lightning to flash, will it come to you and say, "At your service"? Who tells the abyss when the Nile will flood, or who tells the rooster that rain will fall? Who is wise enough to count the clouds and tilt them over to pour out the rain that hardens the dust into lumps? Do you find food for lions to eat and satisfy hungry young lions when they hide in their caves or lie in wait in their dens? Who is it that feeds the ravens when they wander about hungry, when their young cry to me for food?
So something I find interesting about the book of Job is that despite it being everyone's favorite example of suffering and questioning why tragedies befall those who clearly don't deserve it, despite it being the go-to theodicy text in the Bible, I find that no one actually likes the book of Job very much. And to be fair, there's a lot to object to in the book of Job. First off, the entire premise that God is going to just stand by and let Hasatan destroy Job's life, kill all his children and livestock, give him painful boils, and generally refuse to relent until Job literally wishes he had never been born. It's just not a great look for God to allow such misfortune to happen to a good man just to settle a bet. Not to mention, the final passage has a kind of disgusting implication to it, where the narrative basically says that Job gained everything back and even more. And when it comes to livestock and housing and other examples of Job's material wealth, that might be enough. But the same passage talks about Job having more children. And I take issue with the very suggestion that Job had more kids, so that made it all better that all of his children prior to this died suddenly in a terrible accident. Are new children supposed to make Job forget all of his other kids? Really? He's not a puppy. And finally, there's this speech that God gives at the end, which we've just read, which frankly, in context, looks pretty cruel and rude, especially when we in the audience know that God is precisely the source of Job's suffering. I've seen it well phrased in a tweet by a user named Daniel Kibblesmith. Job says, "Hey God, you killed like literally all of my kids. What's up with that?" And God's response is, "How dare you speak that way to the inventor of the hippopotamus?" I mean, really, of all the jerk moves, who responds to genuine suffering and pain like Job's by saying, "Do you know who I am?" But beyond this, I think the root of the general distaste with Job is a PR issue. People don't like the book of Job as much as they like the idea of the book of Job. They want there to be a book in the Bible that comforts us in times of suffering and gives us an understanding of why the dark clouds must pass over us. They want there to be a place in the sacred text to consult for answers in hard times. And this is what they've been told Job is. The issue there is there are no answers of any kind in the book of Job at all. And that's not a problem, except that the general population is constantly told to consult Job when they're seeking answers about suffering and loss. And then when they get there, there are no answers. There are 3 guys doing some really heavy-duty victim blaming, while a 4th guy expresses a lot of mild suicidal ideation, and then a 5th guy shows up and victim blames everybody present, and then God shows up, and when God shows up, she only speaks in questions. The book of Job has a lot of opinions about suffering and grief, but it doesn't really have any answers to it. And mind you, personally, I don't think there is an answer to the question of why people suffer. It's only natural to want an explanation for the pain and loss and injustice we face in the world. As humans, we've been nurtured to seek to learn how to avoid pain. When a child touches their hand to the stove, we teach them why that hurts, and we encourage them not to do it again. So, of course, when faced with the pain of grief and suffering, our reaction is to try and find out how to stop touching the stove in this case being the entire concept of mortality. Of course, nothing will ever ease the pain of loss except living through it. And I found that the worst theology tends to come up when people try to explain death and loss and suffering. Because it is our nature as humans, too, to attempt to ease the suffering that is in front of us. As cruel as humans can be to each other, I do genuinely believe that. And also because the majority of humans, I've found, are not great with long silences. So when faced with a pain they can't undo and a silence that yawns and stretches like it's getting ready to hibernate in the funeral parlor, they just keep talking. And that's when they say all those things that are intended to make the bereaved feel better, but are really horrifying when you think about them for more than a second. Everything happens for a reason. Oh, great. So now you're saying it's secretly a good thing my child died, but we don't know why yet. Lovely to know that you believe the world is better off without them. God needed one more angel for the heavenly choir. Cool. Funny thing about God, she can create angels. She didn't have to kill my wife to get one. She literally could have made one out of thin air. And we're all familiar now with, God sent this hurricane to punish us because of the gays, which she could send a memo instead of murdering completely random people in a completely random city. Like the disasters don't all hit Fire Island and P-Town, so if God's targeting the queers, she could stand to work on her aim. My point being, historically, humans in general are pretty lousy at finding explanations for grief and suffering, and we often say unintentionally horrible things when we try. So, of course, Job and his friends are also pretty lousy at this and might say unintentionally horrible things. And we might think of the entire book of Job as a rejection of meeting suffering with explanation. Job comes into this book waiting for an answer for all the suffering he's experienced. Job's friends offer the only explanations they know. If the world we live in is just, and if our God is good, then Job must have done something wrong, because that's the only way they can conceive of human suffering in a good world. Job protests because he knows he has been good, and he knows that God is good. But if this is true, then he can't figure out why he is suffering so much. God listens to Job asking for answers, and Job's friends offering answers, and in the midst of all these bad explanations, God enters instead with questions. Because there is no good answer. Some suffering is too great for any reason or explanation to make it okay. There is no good enough reason why the young die. There is no good enough reason why the corrupt and selfish rise to the top. There is no good enough reason for people to be living in the streets. There's no good enough reason for people to be murdered. There is no good enough reason for women to have their bodies taken advantage of, or for children to grow up fatherless, or for global hunger and bombs being dropped. There is no explanation that will erase any of that. Job cries out in immense suffering, and his friends treat it as some kind of perverse mystery novel where there will be a happy ending if they can just figure out the right solution. And I can tell you, because I've lived through it, that finding the killer may help a bit, but it does not erase the pain, and it does not give back the days of the dead. When we cease to read this text as one in which God tells us not to question suffering and begin to see it as a reflection on suffering happening and the fact that we can't explain it away, it changes. It becomes no longer a tale of God making a bet on the life of a faithful servant. Instead, it becomes a testament to the fact that the pain of life and its beauty can intermingle so perfectly. Even seeing it in this light within the text changes the nature of God's response. No longer does she brashly declare that she can do whatever she wants because she is God and you better not question it. Instead, she notes Job's wondering and questions, and she invites Job to do just that. She lets Job know that it's all right not to understand and that he can question the justice of the universe. And he can live without answers, and that answers wouldn't do anything to ease his grief in the first place. God enters into the suffering with Job. She becomes herself a questioner, asking about the fundamental nature of the world and the cosmos, though we can safely assume that she knows already. Unlike Job's friends, she has the compassion to suffer and wonder with Job and to hold that space for Job not to know why bad things happen. God enters into the space of Job's suffering, but God does not leave Job to wonder only at tragedy and misfortune. God uses the occasion to open Job's eyes to the grand beauty of the world, hand in hand with its pain. She invites Job to contemplate the seas and the skies and the stars and the light and the darkness and the birds and lions and creatures of the sea. She takes this first step of sitting with Job in all the confusion about the suffering in the world, but moves that into a second step of reminding Job of all the beauty that is also present in the world. In the end, if we read this text right, it becomes a reminder to all of us how to encounter suffering and those who suffer. We do not attempt to explain anything away or make them feel better. We let them suffer, and we suffer with them. And we also marvel with them, and we bond in a shared moment of not knowing and not having any answers to anything. God tells all of us here that the world is a big place, full of much pain and much grandeur, all mingled together so we can no longer tell them apart. And instead of telling us to shut up and accept it, she tells us to embrace it, to look at it, to marvel at it, to rue it, to live in this constant state of wondering why and how and what and when, and wondering every which way. And more than anything, God invites us not to know, to be content with seeing all these wonders and not understanding them. So if you'll indulge me, in the light of this understanding that we experience kinship in our collective confusion and wonder, here are some of the things I do not know. I don't know why there is hunger in the world and also $3 million bottles of tequila. I don't know why nations war with each other. I don't know why we are harassed and assaulted and killed for basic biological difference. I don't know how the vapors of the clouds shift and form shapes and catch the light, becoming golden pink at sunset. I don't know what crawls in the earth beneath my feet at any given moment. I don't know how people continue to hurt each other. I don't know how those who have so much can see those who have so little they are struggling to survive, but just keep on walking. I don't know the movements of the sun in the universe or how far its rays travel from its place in the sky to light up my fingers as I lay in bed typing this. I don't know why our cells sometimes decide to keep replicating themselves long past the time when we need them to, and on until our organs swell and our blood vessels become clogged. I don't know the current of the wind or where it goes after it blows past and ruffles my hair while I wait for the bus. I don't know why young men die in their sleep. I don't know the motions of the waves or why they foam up at the land's edge, swelling white and becoming thick like cappuccino. I don't know why people kill each other. I don't know what it is about the cold air on my skin that makes me smile to myself. I don't know why independent strands of RNA can infect our cells and spread, doing sometimes untold damage to our bodies. And I also don't know why, when that is happening, some people can't just cover their face up. I don't know why, when someone says the right words, our abs contract in laughter and breath moves in and out rapidly. I don't know why we erect fences or why we go into places far away and make the people there into personal pawns. I don't know what it is about sound frequencies that they can complement each other and form chords, and those chords can be played in succession that brings tears to my eyes without any words or ideas or thoughts to accompany them. I don't know why men don't call back, because I don't know the currents of desire and affection and respect and annoyance and fear and connection that pass from person to person at any given moment. I don't know why children are abandoned and left to grow up bitter and angry. I don't know what happens when I take a breath that brings the oxygen into my blood and up to my brain, and how this enables me to continue living. I don't know why we live. I don't know why we fight. I don't know why we die. I don't know what makes us afraid to open up to one another. I don't know the flight paths of the birds or how the aerodynamics of their bodies allow them to stay in the air. I don't know why we consume endlessly and give no thought to who is producing. I don't know why there is death and pain and love and fear and joy and sadness and compassion and brutality and mercy and grace and wonder and beauty and loss and resentment and anxiety and warmth and inspiration and excitement and community and friendship. I don't know how anything in life, good or bad, works or where it comes from. So I don't know why bad things happen, and I don't know why good things happen. And that's fine, because what I do know is that hope doesn't come from having the answers, and it doesn't come in a box, and there are no ingredients for it. It is an elusive and ineffable thing, and the only way to get there is by living through everything else until it suddenly surprises you someday. Thank you.